Hello, World History B class. This is your extra topics video about the Margaret Chase Smith 1950 Senate speech. There are some speeches that are timeless, that can be read throughout history, and I think this is one of them. She speaks about McCarthyism during the Red Scare and that sort of thing, but there is something to be said about universal topics and universal themes, and that's really what this speech does. So I'm going to go through, we're going to read it, and talk about it as we go. So it starts out, Mr. President, I would like to speak briefly and simply about a serious national condition. It is a national feeling of fear and frustration that could result in national suicide and the end of everything that we Americans hold dear. It is a condition that comes from the lack of effective leadership either in the legislative branch or the executive branch of our government. Mr. President, I speak as a Republican. I speak as a woman. I speak as a United States Senator. I speak as an American. The United States Senate has long enjoyed worldwide respect as the greatest deliberative body in the world. But recently, that deliberative character has too often been debased to the level of a form of hate and character assassination sheltered by the shield of congressional immunity. It is ironical that we senators can, in debate in the Senate, directly or indirectly, by any form of words, impute to any American who is not a senator any conduct or motive unworthy or unbecoming an American. And without that Senator American having any legal redress against us. Yet if we say the same thing in the Senate about our colleagues, we can be stopped on the grounds of being out of order. So what she's talking about here is HUAC, the Un-American Activities Committee, and there is this gentleman, Joe McCarthy, who is putting out names of people, lists of people in Hollywood and the government who he says he has proof that are communists. Now remember, at this time, communism, that would be like having a list of people who were Islamic terrorists in our world, to put it into perspective, and saying, no, I've got a list of Hollywood movie stars who are terrorists, a list of government employees who are terrorists, and I've got proof. And that's the kind of rhetoric that was happening here. So Margaret Chase is bringing up the point that in the Senate, they can say anything about any American, and there's no redress for that American. However, if they say such character assassinating things about a fellow senator, they can be hushed up on the grounds of being out of order. So she's pointing out the hypocrisy here that regular American citizens don't have the same protections as senators do on the Senate floor. It is strange that we can verbally attack anyone else without restraint and with full protection, and yet we hold ourselves above the same type of criticism here on the Senate floor. Surely the United States is big enough to take self-criticism and self-appraisal. Surely we should be able to take that same kind of character attacks that we dish out to outsiders. I think that it's time for the United States and its members to do some real soul-searching and to weigh our consciences as to the manner in which we are performing our duty to the people of America and the manner in which we are using or abusing our individual powers and privileges. I think it is high time that we remembered that we have sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution. I think it is high time that we remember the Constitution, as amended, speaks not only of the freedom of speech, but also of trial by jury instead of trial by accusation. Whether it be criminal prosecution in court or a character prosecution in the Senate, there is little practical distinction when the life of a person has been ruined. Whether those of us who shout the loudest about Americanism in making character assassinations are all too frequently those who, by our own words and acts, ignore some of the basic principles of Americanism. The right to criticize, the right to hold unpopular beliefs, the right to protest, the right of independent thought. The exercise of these rights should not cost one single American citizen his reputation or his right to a livelihood, nor should he be in danger of losing his reputation or livelihood merely because he happens to know someone who holds unpopular beliefs. Who of us does not? Otherwise, none of us could call our souls our own. Otherwise, thought control would have set in. So again, Margaret Chase is making this very powerful parallel, saying Look, we can't criticize these people who are protesting, who hold unpopular beliefs. And especially if it's just someone they happen to know. Who doesn't know somebody who holds unpopular beliefs? This is a basic right outlined in our Constitution, to hold unpopular beliefs, to criticize the government as we see fit, and to protest and think independently. And we're protected through our Constitution to do those items. So this is a really powerful point she's making, particularly in the time of a Red Scare, saying it's okay for people to question the government. It's okay for people to know communists. The American people are sick and tired of being afraid to speak their minds, lest they be politically smeared as communists or fascists by their opponents. Freedom of speech is not what it used to be in America. It has been so abused by some that it is not exercised by others. The record of the present Democratic administration has provided us with sufficient campaign issues without the necessity of resorting to political smears. America is rapidly losing its position as leader of the world simply because the Democratic administration has pitifully failed to provide effective leadership. The Democratic administration has greatly lost the confidence of the American people by its complacency to the threat of communism here at home and the leak of vital secrets to Russia through key officials of the Democratic administration. There are enough proved cases to make this point without diluting our criticism with unproved charges. The nation sorely needs a Republican victory, but I do not want to see the Republican Party ride to political victory on the four horsemen of calumny, fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smear. I do not want to see the Republican Party win that way. While it may be a fleeting victory for the Republican Party, it would be a more lasting defeat for the American people. Surely it would ultimately be suicide for the Republican Party and the two-party system that has protected our American liberties from the dictatorship of a one-party system. I think this is interesting. They always take time to kind of smear the president, regardless of which party's in power. So there's always pointing of fingers at the president, which still happens today. But I think she makes an interesting point when saying this isn't just about a Republican victory, this is about a victory for the American people. And it's more important to have a long-term successful victory for the American people than it is to have a short-term victory. So she does show that she has some long-term ideas here. It is with these thoughts that I have drafted what I call a declaration of conscience. I am gratified that the senator from New Hampshire, the senator from Vermont, the senator from Oregon, and the senator from New York, the senator from Minnesota, and the senator from New Jersey have concurred in the declaration and have authorized me to announce their concurrence. The declaration reads as follows. We are Republicans, but we are Americans first. It is as Americans we express our concern with the growing confusion that threatens the security and stability of our country. Democrats and Republicans alike have contributed to that confusion. The Democratic administration has initially created the confusion by its lack of effective leadership, by its contradictory grave warnings and optimistic assurances, by its complacency to the threat of communism here at home, by its oversensitiveness to rightful criticism, by its petty bitterness against its critics. Certain elements of the Republican Party have materially added to this confusion in the hopes of riding the Republican Party to victory through selfish political exploitation of fear, bigotry, ignorance, and intolerance. There are enough mistakes of the Democrats for the Republicans to criticize constructively without resorting to political smears. To this extent, Democrats and Republicans alike have unwittingly but undeniably played directly into the communist design of confuse, divide, and conquer. It is high time that we stopped thinking politically as Republicans and Democrats about elections and started thinking patriotically as Americans about national security based in individual freedom. It is high time that we all stop being tools and victims of totalitarian techniques that, if continued here unchecked, will surely end what we have come to cherish as the American way of life. So I like this declaration of conscience. She's talking about we've all screwed up. There are enough screw-ups for the Democrats that have made that we don't have to make screw-ups and smear them. We can criticize them constructively to make things better. She acknowledges that both parties are at fault, and she proposes a way to move forward, to think patriotically as Americans about national security based in individual freedom. And this is really powerful because it's still relevant today. Particularly, we're talking about NSA and CIA and phone tapping and all those things that came out with the Edward Snowden revelations. It's still very much relevant. That we're talking about individual freedom as our basis for national security. So even 65 years later, we're still arguing the same arguments. Now it's about different topics entirely. And it's important to understand that things change slowly. And this is one of those great pieces of evidence talking about things change very slowly, particularly in certain legislative bodies, when national security does become the question. How far do we go to risk our individual freedoms for the purpose of national security? So that's Margaret Chase's 1950 Senate speech. She's a fascinating woman. I highly recommend you do some research on her, but says some very powerful things, particularly about what it means to be an American, what it means to fight communism, promote national security, but also promote our individual rights and freedoms based on the Constitution. If you've got any questions about this topic or anything related to the Red Scare, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in class.